They say some debts are written in blood and some in rain, but hers was written in both. The night she stumbled into the one place she swore she'd never go, and into the arms of the man whose name haunted her dreams. Welcome to Tales by Moonlight. I'm so glad you found your way here, and thank you for clicking. If you appreciate good storytelling and want to hear more, please verify that you are subscribed to the channel. Grab a seat, get comfortable, and let me tell you a story. Maya Jenkins had learned to disappear. Not the kind of disappearing that people noticed, no dramatic exit. No farewell letters, just the slow, careful erasure of a girl who once had a father, whose name mattered in the shadowy corridors of New York's underworld. She worked the night shift at Rosie's Diner on Amsterdam and 147th, a place in Washington Heights where the coffee was weak and the questions were weaker. The fluorescent lights hummed their tired song over cracked vinyl booths and formica tables that had seen better decades. Nobody asked where she came from. Nobody cared that her hands shook every time a man in a dark suit walked through the door. That was exactly how she needed it. Maya had become an expert at being unremarkable. She kept her natural hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wore oversized waitress uniforms that hid her figure, and perfected the art of the forgettable smile, warm enough to earn tips, bland enough to avoid memory. She was background noise in other people's stories, a secondary character who never got a close-up. Safe, invisible, dead inside, but breathing. 15 years. That's how long she'd been a ghost. 15 years since the night the fire took everything, her father, her home, her childhood. 15 years since 8-year-old Maya watched from a closet as flames swallowed their brownstone in Harlem, as men in expensive shoes walked through the smoke like they owned death itself. She remembered the details with crystalline clarity, the way trauma brands memories into your nervous system, the smell of gasoline mixing with her mother's lavender candles, the sound of her father's voice normally so strong, so certain, breaking into pleas that went unanswered, the way the closet door's slats cast prison bar shadows across her small hands pressed over her mouth to keep from screaming, the heat that turned the air thick and unbreathable. And the men. Always the men. She'd seen their faces through that closet door. 3 of them initially, then 2 more who'd arrived to clean up. One of them, silver-haired even then, had looked directly at the closet. Maya had been certain she was next. But another man, older, Korean, with eyes like winter, had said something sharp in a language she didn't understand, and they'd left. Left her there with the flames and her father's body and the ruins of everything she'd been. The official story called it an accident, a gas leak. Tragic. Really, Marcus Jenkins, well-respected community leader, killed in his own home. His wife, Maya's mother, had been out that night at her sister's in Queens. She'd come home to find her world reduced to ash and blackened timber. The grief had been too much. Within a year, cancer took her too, though Maya always believed it was really the broken heart that did it. Maya knew better than the official story. She'd seen the gasoline cans, heard her father's screams, watched Marcus Jenkins, the independent operator who'd controlled a significant piece of Harlem's operations, die begging for mercy that never came. He'd been an independent in a world that didn't appreciate independence. He'd refused to pledge allegiance, refused to bow, refused to let anyone own him. The Park family gave the order. Everyone knew it. No one said it. Old Man Park had been building his empire then, consolidating power, eliminating anyone who wouldn't kneel. Marcus Jenkins had been the biggest holdout, respected enough by the other families that removing him required careful planning, plausible deniability. A tragic accident fit the bill perfectly. And Park Ji-hoon, the son, the heir, the man who now sat where his father once ruled, he'd inherited an empire built on her father's ashes. He'd been away at university when it happened, studying business in Seoul, groomed to take over but shielded from the ugliest parts of the family business. At least, that's what people said. Maya should hate him. God, she'd tried. Spent years sharpening that hatred like a blade, telling herself that one day she'd use it. The gun she kept taped under her bathroom sink had been loaded for a decade, waiting for courage she could never quite find. She'd followed him, studied him, learned his routines, his haunts, his vulnerabilities. For 6 months, she'd been his shadow, waiting for the perfect moment, but the perfect moment never came. Or maybe she'd just never been capable of murder, no matter how justified. Her father had raised her to be better than violence, even though violence had taken him. Because here's the thing about revenge nobody tells you. It keeps you alive, but it doesn't let you live. It gives you purpose, but steals your peace. You become a ghost haunting your own life, waiting for a future that requires you to destroy yourself to achieve it. So Maya poured coffee, smiled at truckers, went home to a studio apartment in Inwood that smelled like bleach and regret. She scrubbed every surface until her hands were raw, as if cleanliness could purify the past. She dreamed of fire every single night. Sometimes she was the child in the closet. Sometimes she was her father burning. Sometimes she was the flame itself, consuming everything in her path. And she survived until the night survival stopped being enough. It started with rain. October rain that turned Manhattan streets into rivers of neon and gasoline, washing the city in that particular kind of melancholy that makes you remember all the things you're trying to forget. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in as many hours, that first real taste of winter pushing through autumn's last defenses. Maya's shift had ended at 11. She'd counted out her tips in the back $43, decent for a Tuesday, changed out of her coffee-stained uniform, and headed into the night. She'd taken the back alley shortcut she always took, the one that avoided main streets, cameras, eyes. It saved 10 minutes and kept her off the grid. In 15 years, she'd perfected the art of leaving no digital footprint. The alley was a narrow canyon between brick buildings, fire escapes zigzagging overhead like metal veins, dumpsters hulked in shadows, and somewhere a cat yowled. Maya's sneakers splashed through puddles, her hood up against the rain, her hands jammed in her jacket pockets. She was halfway through when she heard it. Not a gunshot, not a scream, just silence that felt wrong. The kind of quiet that makes your spine straighten, your breath catch. The city is never truly silent. There's always the hum of traffic, the distant wail of sirens, the percussion of lives being lived. But this silence was absolute, a void that swallowed sound. Maya should have kept walking, should have remembered the first rule of staying invisible. Never look. But her feet stopped anyway. Some instinct screaming that what was happening in the darkness ahead mattered, that turning away would cost her something she couldn't afford to lose. Through the rain, in the amber glow of a dying streetlight, she saw them. 3 men in dark coats standing over a body that wouldn't move again. The body was face down. A spreading pool of black blood looks black at night, haloing the head. One of the standing men was wiping something on a handkerchief. Another was on his phone, speaking quietly. The third, tall, silver-haired, with a face like broken glass, turned his head. Their eyes met. Time crystallized into something sharp and fatal. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Maya saw recognition flash across his face, not of who she was, but of what she was. A witness, a problem, a loose end that needed tying. She ran. Behind her, shouts in Korean, footsteps, the wet slap of expensive shoes on pavement. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she cut through alleys she'd memorized years ago. Paths designed for exactly this, for running, for vanishing. She'd always known this day might come, that her past might catch up, that the invisibility she'd cultivated was only ever temporary. Left at the dumpster, right at the chain-link fence. Through the gap where the fence didn't quite meet the wall. She knew every inch of these streets, had walked them 1,000 times, mapping escape routes the way other people memorized subway lines. But they were faster. And they knew these streets too. The bullet caught her in the side, a white-hot punch that stole her breath and turned her legs to water. She stumbled, caught herself against a brick wall, left a smear of red on stone. Her vision swam. Her hand came away from her side, slick and hot. Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't stop. She pushed off the wall, kept running even as the world tilted and her legs forgot how to work properly. Every step was agony, her body screaming that it was done, that this was where the story ended, in an alley in the rain like something out of a noir film. Her vision blurred, the rain mixed with blood, painting the world in watercolor shades of crimson and shadow. She could hear them behind her, closer now. One of them was calling to the others, coordinating, boxing her in. They were professionals. She was just a waitress with a gunshot wound. She didn't know where she was going anymore, just away, just anywhere but here. Her mind was static, pain and panic erasing everything except the most basic imperative: survive. When she looked up, gasping, the sign glowed like a promise or a threat. Hwaryeon the Blossom, elegant Korean characters above English script. The restaurant, his restaurant, Park Ji-hoon's front for everything dark and unspoken in this city. The irony wasn't lost on her, even through the pain. She'd spent 6 months planning how to get close to him, and now she was about to literally fall at his feet. The universe, it seemed, had a sick sense of humor. Every instinct screamed to keep running, but her body was done listening. Her legs were giving out, her vision tunneling. The door was right there, solid wood and brass handles, warm light spilling through the frosted glass panels. and she could hear them behind her. Closer now. Inevitable. Maya Jenkins made a choice. She pushed through the door and stumbled into the last place on earth she ever thought she'd find salvation. The restaurant was empty. Not closed empty, wrong empty. The kind of silence that happens when dangerous men need privacy. White tablecloths gleamed under low amber light, candles flickered in glass holders, casting dancing shadows on walls decorated with minimalist Korean art stark ink paintings of mountains and mist. The air smelled of soju and expensive cologne and something cooking in the kitchen, garlic and ginger and sesame oil. A single table in the back, half hidden in shadow, held the remnants of an interrupted meal. Banchan dishes arranged like a meditation, a bottle of what looked like very old soju, 2 glasses, though only one showed signs of use. And sitting there, perfectly still, was Park Ji-hoon. Maya knew his face, the way you know a scar, something studied in mirrors, memorized in nightmares. She'd followed him for 6 months, learned the angles of his face from every distance and in every light. But seeing him now, up close, bleeding on his floor, was different. Sharp Korean features that could have been carved from marble, all clean lines and austere beauty, dark hair swept back from a face too young to carry such weight, strong jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it smiled rarely and meant it even less, eyes the color of midnight or onyx or something colder. He was younger than she expected, 35 maybe, old enough to carry the weight of an empire, young enough to still believe he could outrun his father's shadow. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her annual rent, perfectly tailored, not a thread out of place despite the late hour. No tie, top button undone, a concession to privacy. On his left hand, a simple silver ring, no ostentatious displays of wealth, no flashy jewelry. Everything about him screamed controlled power. He looked at her the way a predator looks at something bleeding, curious, calculating, patient. Slowly, deliberately, Ji-hoon set down his glass of soju, the crystal catching the candlelight. He rose from his chair with the casual grace of a man who'd never had to hurry, never had to fear. Movement like water, efficient and inevitable. 2 other men materialized from the shadows, bodyguards, silent and efficient. One was young, maybe mid-20s, with the build of a boxer. The other was older, scarred, holding his body like someone who'd survived too many fights to be reckless. But Ji-hoon raised one hand, and they stopped mid-step, frozen. "Who shot you?" His voice was low, accented slightly, not heavy, just present. A reminder of bilingual fluency and childhood spent between cultures. It was wrapped in that particular authority that made questions sound like commands. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What happened?" Just the information that mattered. Strategic, efficient, cold. Maya swayed, pressed her hand harder against the wound in her side. Blood seeped between her fingers. Hot and insistent. She should speak, should lie, should do anything but stand there bleeding on his floor like an offering at an altar she'd never wanted to approach. "Does it matter?" The words came out rough, defiant, her voice strained with pain. "They're already dead." It wasn't true. But she needed him to think she was dangerous, not desperate. Needed him to see threat, not victim. Dangerous people got respect. Victims got disposal. Ji-hoon's eyes narrowed, and she saw the calculation happening behind them. He moved closer, not rushed, just inevitable, like gravity, like the tide. Each step measured, controlled. And that's when Maya saw it happen. Recognition. It flickered across his face like lightning. There and gone, but unmistakable. His gaze dropped from her face to her collarbone, to the scar that peeked above her shirt, a twisted rope of tissue, silver against her brown skin. The one she'd gotten 15 years ago, crawling through broken glass to escape flames. The one she usually kept hidden, but which the torn shirt now exposed. His eyes widened fractionally, the first crack in his composure, then tracked back to her face, searching, calculating. She saw the moment it clicked. The memory surfacing. The connection made. "Jenkins," he said quietly. Not a question. A conclusion. The name fell from his lips like a stone into still water, sending ripples through everything. Maya's breath caught. 15 years of hiding, erased in a single look. 15 years of carefully constructed invisibility, and he'd seen through it in seconds. The scar. He'd recognized the scar, which meant he knew about that night, had seen the photos, had studied the case file, which meant her father's death hadn't been some anonymous order carried out by faceless soldiers. It had mattered enough to warrant documentation, study, memory. Maya Jenkins. Jihoon took another step, and she should have backed away, but there was nowhere left to go. Her back was against the door, her legs barely holding her weight. Marcus's daughter, the girl who died in the fire. Clearly, she managed, forcing steel into her voice even as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. The reports were exaggerated. Something almost like respect flickered in his expression. Or maybe curiosity. Or maybe calculation, the look of a man reorganizing his understanding of the world to accommodate new, dangerous information. With men like him, it was hard to tell the difference between emotions. Everything was a weapon. Everything was strategy. "You're bleeding in my restaurant," Jihoon observed, his tone almost clinical. "That's inconvenient. I'll try to die more considerately next time." The words came out with more bite than she'd intended, pain making her reckless. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, something darker, more complicated. Amusement, maybe, or admiration for defiance in the face of death. Then he moved fast, faster than a man his size should move, and caught her as her legs finally gave out. Strong arms. The smell of expensive cologne mixing with gunpowder and rain. Maya's body screamed at her to fight, to run, to do anything but surrender to the enemy's embrace, but consciousness was slipping like water through her fingers, and Park Ji-hoon was the only solid thing in a world gone soft and sideways. His arms were surprisingly gentle, adjusting her weight like she was something fragile, valuable. She felt herself being lifted, cradled against his chest. Heard his heartbeat, steady and slow, a counterpoint to her own panicked rhythm. "Minjun," he said over his shoulder to the younger bodyguard. "Clear the building. No one was here tonight. No one saw anything. Am I clear? Boss, if she's—" No one was here. The command in his voice left no room for argument, no space for question. It was the voice of a man accustomed to absolute obedience, the voice of someone who'd killed people for less than hesitation. Maya tried to speak, to protest, to understand what was happening. But the darkness was rising, pulling her under. The last thing she registered was Ji-hoon's voice, quieter now, almost gentle. "Stay with me. Don't you dare die in my arms, Jenkins." Then, nothing. Maya woke to pain and dim light. Not the restaurant somewhere above it. She registered details slowly, her mind sluggish, fighting through the fog of blood loss and shock. A private apartment, all dark wood and minimalist Korean aesthetics. Clean lines, empty spaces, everything in its place. The kind of space that cost more than she'd made in her entire life, where every object was carefully chosen, meaningful. A scroll painting on one wall, stark black brushstrokes suggesting mountains or waves. A low bookshelf filled with volumes in Korean and English. A small Buddhist shrine in one corner, incense burned down to ash. She was on a low leather sofa, black and butter-soft, the kind of furniture that ages into itself. Her shirt was gone, replaced by professional bandaging wrapped tight around her ribs. Someone had cleaned the blood, dressed the wound with expert precision. An IV line ran from her arm to a bag hanging on a portable stand. Someone had access to medical supplies, knew what they were doing, and Ji-hoon sat across from her in a chair, elbows on his knees, watching her with those unreadable dark eyes. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and she could see the edge of a tattoo on his left forearm, a phoenix, maybe, or a dragon, something in stark black ink, traditional style. His hands were clean now, but she remembered blood on them. Hers. "The bullet went through," he said, as casually as if discussing the weather. "Clean entry and exit. You'll live. The doctor said you were lucky another inch to the left, and you'd have bled out before you reached my door. Lucky me." Maya tried to sit up, immediately regretted it. Fire bloomed along her side, stealing her breath, white-hot and nauseating. Her vision grayed at the edges. "Don't." Ji-hoon didn't move. But somehow the word stopped her cold. Not quite a command, but weighted with authority she couldn't quite resist. "You lost a lot of blood. The transfusion will help, but you need rest. If you tear the stitches, you'll be back where you started." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it, raw and desperate. "Why didn't you just let me bleed out? Why didn't you kill me yourself? I'm Marcus Jenkins's daughter. Your father killed mine. I've been following you for 6 months with a gun and murder in my heart. So why am I alive? Finish what your father started," she wanted to say. End what should have ended 15 years ago. "Because," Ji-hoon said quietly, leaning back in his chair, "I'm not my father." The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. Maya stared at him. Really looked, trying to find the monster she'd built in her head. The man who should have pulled the trigger the second he recognized her name. The heir to the empire built on her father's ashes. Instead, she saw exhaustion in the shadows under his eyes, careful control in the way he held his body, like someone always expecting attack. And underneath it all, something that looked almost like loneliness, the isolation of someone at the top with nowhere to fall but down. "I've been watching you," she admitted, the words spilling out like a confession. Pain and blood loss were making her reckless, stripping away the careful walls she'd built. "For 6 months, following you, learning your routines, trying to decide if I had the courage to kill you." "Yes." Jihoon nodded slowly, like this was reasonable, expected even. Like finding out someone had been stalking him with murderous intent was just another Tuesday. "I know. You're not as subtle as you think. My people spotted you the second week." Maya's breath caught. "You knew?" "Of course I knew. You think I survived this long by being oblivious?" A ghost of something amusement maybe crossed his face. "I had you investigated, learned who you were within 3 days, which meant I knew exactly why you were following me. And you did nothing? What would you have had me do? Kill you preemptively? Disappear you?" Jihoon's voice was steady, matter of fact. "You hadn't done anything yet, hadn't pulled the trigger, hadn't crossed the line from thought to action. And I thought..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I thought perhaps you deserved the right to decide, to choose whether you'd let revenge define you or whether you'd find another way." "And did you decide?" he continued. "Did you figure out if you had the courage to kill me?" Maya's hand drifted to her side, where her gun should have been. Gone. Of course it was gone. She was unarmed in the home of her family's killer, vulnerable and stupid, and dependent on the mercy of a man who had no reason to show her any. "I don't know," she whispered, the truth bitter in her mouth. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Every time I saw you, I imagined it. Imagined the moment, the look on your face, the justice of it. But I couldn't pull the trigger. I'd stand there with the gun in my jacket and my hand shaking, and I just couldn't." Jihoon stood, moved to a small bar in the corner, minimalist, like everything else, clean lines and expensive bottles. He poured 2 glasses of something amber and expensive, brought one to her. Their fingers brushed as he pressed the glass into her hand, and she felt the warmth of him, the strange steadiness. "Then stay," he said, settling back into his chair. "Until you figure it out. Until you decide whether I'm worth killing, or whether there's another ending to this story. You can't be serious. You're just going to keep me here? Let me heal in your home? Where else would you go?" Jihoon asked reasonably. "The men who shot you work for Kang Dae-jung, my second in command, which means they're not random street thugs, they're professionals, and they saw your face. If you leave, they'll find you. They'll finish what they started. So I'm a prisoner." "No." His eyes held hers. "You're under my protection. There's a difference. I don't want your protection. You stumbled into my restaurant bleeding, Jagia." The endearment slipped out, casual, unexpected. "You already have it, whether you want it or not." The word "little one," darling, should have felt patronizing. Instead, it felt intimate, dangerous, in a completely different way, like a doorway opening onto something she couldn't begin to understand. Maya drank the whiskey, let it burn down her throat, let it anchor her to this surreal moment where her enemy wrapped her wounds and called her safe. The liquor was smooth, expensive, probably older than she was. "The men who shot you," Jihoon continued, his voice hardening. "They work for Kang. He's been cleaning up loose ends, tying up problems before they become complications. You witnessed something you shouldn't have. Someone died in that alley, and you saw it happen. Who was it? One of mine. A young kid, barely 20, who'd gotten ideas about stealing from the organization. Stupid, but not worth killing over. I would have handled it differently." Jihoon's jaw tightened, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. Anger, carefully controlled. But Kang doesn't ask permission anymore. He's been making moves, consolidating power, preparing for something. I haven't figured out what yet. So why tell me this? Because you deserve to know what you stumbled into. And because... Jihoon met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd crashed through his door, she saw something raw beneath the careful control. Something vulnerable and aching. Because maybe I'm tired of playing these games. Tired of the politics and the violence and the constant calculation. Tired of paying for sins that were never mine. Outside, rain continued to fall, drumming against the windows in hypnotic rhythm. And inside, in the space between them, something fragile and impossible began to bloom. 3 days. That's how long Maya stayed in the apartment above Hwaryeon, healing and hiding while Jihoon's world moved beneath her like dark water. She told herself it was practical, necessary, that leaving meant dying, and she'd spent 15 years surviving for a reason. But the truth, the dangerous, complicated truth, was that she didn't want to leave. Every day she stayed, the apartment felt less like a cage and more like a sanctuary. Every conversation with Jihoon peeled back another layer of the assumptions she'd built. Jihoon came and went like clockwork, and she found herself watching for him, listening for his footsteps on the stairs. Morning coffee at 7, always 2 cups, one left on the small table by the sofa where she slept. The coffee was good, expensive, prepared with care. Sometimes there was a note, nothing profound, just practical updates. Doctor coming at 2 to check stitches, or Minjun is outside the door if you need anything. Lunch at 1, simple things, Korean dishes she half remembered from childhood friendships. Kimchi jjigae, bibimbap, japchae, with the vegetables cut small so she could eat without straining her injury. Food prepared by invisible hands and delivered without comment, though she suspected Jihoon was the one choosing the meals, remembering what she ate, what she left behind. Evenings he spent in the chair across from her, reading reports or making quiet phone calls in Korean that made her pulse quicken. She caught phrases here and there. Her Korean was rusty, but not dead. Business discussions, territorial negotiations, the constant maintenance of power. He never touched her, never crowded her space, but his presence filled the room like smoke impossible to ignore, strangely comforting. On the second night, she asked the question that had been burning in her chest since she'd woken up. "Did you know about my father? About what really happened that night?" Jihoon looked up from his paperwork, a leather portfolio filled with what looked like financial reports. The lamplight carved shadows across his face, made him look older, tired, stripped of the dangerous glamour, and revealed as just a man carrying too much weight. He was quiet for a long moment, and she thought he might not answer. Then he set the papers aside, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I was 20 when it happened," he said finally. "Away at university in Seoul. My father called me, told me there'd been an incident, a fire in Harlem. A man had died, someone who'd been causing problems for the organization. He told me Marcus Jenkins had betrayed us, was working with the feds, planning to bring down everything my grandfather had built, that the fire was justice, necessary, regrettable, but necessary. It was murder." Maya's voice was flat, hard. Yes, no hesitation, no excuse, just acknowledgement. It was murder. But I was 20 and stupid and believed my father was infallible. I believed what he told me because believing anything else would have meant looking at the monster in the mirror. "When did you learn the truth?" 3 years later. I came home when my father's heart started failing. He knew he was dying, started preparing me to take over. That's when I found them, the real records, hidden in a safe in his study. Financial reports showing what he'd actually been doing, who he'd actually been stealing from. And a file on your father. Jihoon's hands clenched into fists, the only sign of emotion in his controlled posture. Marcus Jenkins wasn't working with the feds. He'd discovered that my father was expanding too aggressively, stepping on toes that shouldn't be stepped on, skimming from partnerships that required exact accounting. Your father was going to broker peace between the families, create a new order, establish rules that would keep us all from destroying each other. My father saw it as a threat to his power, to his vision of total control. Maya's breath caught, 15 years of certainty cracking like glass. "So, my father died for trying to do the right thing. Your father died because mine was a paranoid man who chose power over honor every single time." Jihoon's voice was flat, factual, like he'd made peace with hating a dead man. When I confronted him about it, he didn't deny it. He said it was necessary, that leadership required hard choices, that I'd understand when I was older. "Do you understand?" "No." Jihoon met her eyes. "I never will. There's no understanding that kind of violence, that kind of betrayal. When I took over, I spent 2 years undoing his damage, making reparations, rebuilding bridges with the families he'd alienated. I returned the money he'd stolen, piece by piece. I established rules, codes, boundaries. I tried to be different, but some debts..." He looked at her, really looked, and she saw the weight of it in his eyes. "Some debts can't be repaid. Some sins don't wash clean. You could have found me," Maya said, her voice breaking. "Told me the truth. Let me know it wasn't my father's fault, that he wasn't a traitor, that he died for being a good man. You were a ghost, Maya. Do you know how hard I looked? Ji-hoon leaned forward, intensity burning in his gaze. I searched for years, hired investigators, tracked every lead. I wanted to tell you the truth. Wanted to give you something. Some piece of justice or closure. But you disappeared, completely new identity. No digital footprint. No connections to your old life. You were better at hiding than I was at finding. He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face, and part of me thought you deserved to stay hidden, that you were safe somewhere, free of all this blood and violence, that bringing you back into this world would be cruel. So I stopped looking, told myself you were alive somewhere, living a good life, far away from everything that killed your father. I was never free, Maya whispered, the words cracking with 15 years of suppressed grief. I was in prison, just one without bars. I've been living half a life, always watching over my shoulder, always waiting for the past to catch up. I've been existing, not living, surviving, not thriving. And every single day, I've carried this weight, this question of whether I was a coward for not avenging him. Ji-hoon stood, crossed the space between them, sat beside her on the sofa, careful of her wound, respectful of her space, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. He didn't reach for her, didn't touch, just sat there like a promise of presence. Tell me about him, Ji-hoon said quietly. Not the operator, not the name in reports. Tell me about Marcus. Tell me about your father. So she did. She told him about Marcus Jenkins, the man who made terrible pancakes, always burned on one side, and sang off-key to old soul music while cleaning on Sunday mornings. The man who taught her to play chess when she was 6, let her win until she was 10, then stopped because he said she was ready to earn it, to learn that victory meant something only when you fought for it. She told him about Saturday afternoons in Morningside Park, her father teaching her to throw a baseball, laughing when she hit him square in the chest. About Sunday dinners with extended family, her father presiding over a table full of food and laughter and love. About the way he'd tuck her in every night with the same words, "You are my star, baby girl. You shine brighter than anything in this dark world." She told him about the man who'd taken night classes at City College, determined to get his degree even while running his operations, who'd donated anonymously to youth programs in Harlem, who'd mediated disputes between neighborhood families, who'd been trying to build something better, cleaner, safer. He was working on leaving the life, Maya said, tears sliding down her face now, hot and unstoppable. He'd been putting money aside, making plans. He wanted to take Mom and me somewhere clean, start over. He wanted me to grow up normal, go to college, have choices he'd never had. That's why he was trying to broker peace. He wanted to leave everyone in a better position than he'd found them. He wanted to do it right. By the time she finished, she was openly weeping. 15 years of suppressed grief finally breaking through. Ji-hoon crossed the last distance between them, wrapped one arm around her shoulders, offered a handkerchief, actual cloth, monogrammed, absurdly old-fashioned and utterly perfect. "He sounds like he was a good man," Ji-hoon said, his voice rough with emotion. "The kind of man who deserved better than he got, better than my father gave him. He was." Maya wiped her eyes, her face, trying to pull herself together. "And your father took him from me, took everything from me." "I know." Ji-hoon's voice was raw now, stripped of its usual control. "I know, and I'm sorry. God, Maya, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for him, for all of it, for every choice that led to this. I can't fix it, can't undo it, can't give you back what you lost. But I'm sorry." She should hate him, should pull away. But his shoulder was warm and solid, and she was so tired of carrying grief alone, so tired of being strong, being invisible, being nothing but survival instinct, wrapped in human skin. So Maya let herself lean just a little, just enough, and Ji-hoon didn't move away, didn't try to take more than she was offering, just held her while she cried for everything she'd lost. They stayed like that until her tears ran dry, until the grief exhausted itself, until all that remained was a strange, fragile peace. The 4th day, Ji-hoon cooked. Not ordered food, actually cooked. Maya watched from the sofa, half amused, half fascinated, as this man who commanded an empire with a word struggled with the practical realities of a kitchen. "You're burning it," she observed as smoke began rising from the pan. "I'm crisping it. There's a difference." Ji-hoon waved a dish towel at the smoke detector, scowling. "That's what burning things always say." He shot her a look, exasperated, almost playful, and something in her chest loosened. Warmth, dangerous and unexpected, the kind of warmth that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with connection, with seeing someone as human rather than enemy. They ate at the small table spicy kimchi jjigae that was actually pretty good, rice that was slightly overcooked, banchan that was definitely from the restaurant below, and soju that tasted like clouds and fire. And they talked, not about blood or revenge or the weight of their names, just talked. Ji-hoon told her about Seoul, about studying business and literature at Korea University, about living between cultures and never quite fitting in either, about reading Dante in Italian, Mishima in Japanese, wanting to understand the world beyond the narrow confines of his inheritance. "I got this the day I buried him," Ji-hoon said, rolling up his sleeve to show her the tattoo on his forearm more clearly. It was a phoenix, rendered in traditional Korean style, rising from stylized flames. A reminder that I could rise from his ashes, that I could choose differently, that I didn't have to be him. "And have you?" Maya asked. "Chosen differently?" "I'm trying." He met her eyes across the small table, and she saw the exhaustion there, the weight of constant choice. "Every day I'm trying. I've gone legitimate where I can, cut ties with the ugliest parts of the business. I've established codes, no drugs, no human trafficking, no preying on the vulnerable. I've tried to be something other than my father's son, but you're still in it, still running an organization built on violence." "Yes. No denial, no excuse. I am. And some days I wonder if that makes me a hypocrite, or just a realist. You don't walk away from this life, Maya. You don't just retire. There's no exit except death or prison. So I stay, and I try to minimize the damage, try to protect the people under me, try to be less terrible than my father was. It's not redemption, but it's something." Maya told him about the diner, about her regular customers, Joe, who always ordered black coffee and apple pie and left exactly 15% every time. Marie, who left romance novels behind, her reading glasses tucked into the pages. Tommy, who'd proposed to his girlfriend in booth 7, nervous and sweating, dropping the ring twice before finally getting the question out. "Small lives," Maya said. "Normal lives. The kind I watched from the outside for 15 years, serving coffee and wondering what it felt like to be that free, that uncomplicated." "You were lonely," Ji-hoon said. "Not a question, just observation, gentle and true." "Isn't everyone?" Maya countered. "Yes." His hand moved across the table, stopped just short of touching hers, hovering in that liminal space between contact and restraint. "But some of us pretend better than others." The air between them shifted, thickened. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs for reasons that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the terrifying realization that she was starting to see him, not as the enemy, not as the son of her father's killer, but as a person. A complicated, damaged, trying person who carried his own scars, his own ghosts. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "Yes." Ji-hoon's eyes held hers. "It is." But neither of them moved away. The truth came on the 5th night, shattering the fragile peace they'd built. Ji-hoon's phone rang at 11 p.m. unusual, given his strict rules about business hours. He stepped into the other room to take the call, but Maya could hear the shift in his voice, the tension, the anger building like a storm. When he came back, his face was granite, every muscle tight with controlled fury. "What is it?" Maya asked, sitting up despite the twinge in her side. "Kang, my second in command. He knows you're here, knows who you are." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened, and she saw his hands clench into fists. "The hit on you, it wasn't random. Kang ordered it. Specifically targeted you. Why? I'm nobody, a waitress. I've been a ghost for 15 years. Because you're a loose end," Ji-hoon said, his voice hard. "A reminder of old sins. And because..." He hesitated, and Maya saw something flicker across his face. Rage. Pure, undiluted rage. Because he was there that night. 15 years ago. He helped set the fire. He was one of my father's men then. Young and ambitious and willing to do whatever it took to advance. He personally doused your home in gasoline. He personally made sure there were no survivors. The room tilted. Maya gripped the edge of the sofa, trying to breathe through sudden, overwhelming rage. The silver-haired man in the alley, the one who'd turned and seen her. She'd recognized him without realizing it, the same face. 15 years older but fundamentally unchanged. "He's been with you this whole time?" she managed. "Working for you? Your second in command?" "I didn't know." Ji-hoon's voice cracked with fury and guilt. "Not until tonight. My father protected him, kept certain things hidden. The men who actually carried out the hit were never documented, never named in the files I found. I knew Kang was loyal to my father, but I thought... He stopped, started again. I thought he was just old guard, conservative, pushing back against my changes. I didn't know he was personally responsible for your father's death. And now? Maya stood, ignoring the pain, ignoring Ji-hoon's gesture to sit back down. What happens now? Now he's threatening to expose you to the other organizations. To start a war if I don't hand you over. Ji-hoon moved toward her, not touching but close. He's been making moves, consolidating support among the old guard, the ones who think I've made us weak. You're his excuse to challenge my authority, to take my position, then give me to him. The words tasted like ash, but Maya forced them out. I'm not worth a war. I'm not worth destroying everything you've built. Don't. Ji-hoon's voice was sharp, commanding. Don't you dare make yourself small for men like him. Don't you dare decide your life is worth less than my position. But it is. I'm a ghost, Ji-hoon. I've always been a ghost. You have responsibilities, people who depend on you, an organization that needs leadership. I'm just one person, one life against hundreds. Not to me. He crossed the room, cupped her face in his hands' rough palms, surprisingly gentle touch. Not to me, Maya. To me, you're the first real thing I've felt in years. The first person who sees me as something other than Park Ji-hoon, heir to an empire, leader of an organization. You see the person underneath. You see the choices I'm trying to make. The world narrowed to this, his eyes burning with intensity she couldn't quite name, his breath warm against her lips. The impossible realization that somewhere between hatred and survival, somewhere in 3 days of coffee and conversation and shared grief, she'd started falling. This is insane, she whispered. I know. We barely know each other. I know. Your family killed mine. I know. Ji-hoon's thumb traced her cheekbone, and she felt the tremor in his hand, the vulnerability beneath the strength, and I'd burn it all down before I let anyone hurt you again. The organization, my position, my name, all of it. I'd walk away from it all if it meant keeping you safe. You can't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. Maya kissed him, or he kissed her. Or they met in the middle. It didn't matter who moved first, just that the space between them disappeared, replaced by heat and desperate tenderness. He tasted like soju, and something darker, like violence turned to longing, like power surrendered in favor of connection. His hands moved to her hair, careful of her wound, and she pressed closer despite the pain. Despite every logical reason this was a terrible idea. She was falling, had been falling since the moment he'd caught her, and there was no bottom in sight, just this terrifying free fall into something that might destroy them both. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ji-hoon pressed his forehead to hers. No one touches you while I'm breathing, he murmured, the words fierce and tender at once. Do you understand? No one. Not Kang, not the other families, not fate itself. You're mine to protect now, and I protect what's mine. Maya understood. She understood that she was falling for the son of her father's killer, that this was dangerous and complicated and possibly the worst decision of her life. She understood that 15 years of planning revenge had led her not to murder but to this, to love, or something close enough to feel like salvation. She understood that for the first time in 15 years, she felt something other than numb. And God help her. She understood that she'd fight for this, for him, for whatever impossible future they could build from the ashes of their past. Outside, rain had stopped. But inside, between them, a different storm was just beginning. Maya woke to voices, not the quiet murmur of Ji-hoon on the phone, but raised voices, sharp with anger, and barely controlled violence. She sat up carefully, her wound pulling but mostly healed now. 5 days of rest making movement possible if not comfortable. She moved toward the door that separated the bedroom from the living area, pressing her ear against the wood. You're threatening everything I've built. Ji-hoon's voice, stripped of its usual control, raw with fury. What you've built. Another voice, male, older, dripping with contempt, Korean, but Maya's rusty understanding caught most of it. You've made us soft, legitimate business, peace treaties, codes of honor your father would be ashamed. My father was reckless. He made enemies he couldn't afford, stole from people he should have partnered with. Your father was powerful. He was feared. And you're protecting the daughter of a traitor. The older voice turned cold, cutting, harboring the one person who could destroy everything, who witnessed crimes that should have stayed buried. Marcus Jenkins was not a traitor. Ji-hoon's voice dropped, turned dangerous. He was a better man than my father ever was. Better than you've ever been. Silence, heavy, dangerous. So you do know who she is. The older voice Kang. It had to be Kang turned contemplative, calculating. How long, Ji-hoon? How long have you been keeping secrets from me? Maya pressed closer to the door, found the crack where it didn't quite meet the frame. Through the narrow opening, she could see them. Ji-hoon stood in the center of the living room, every muscle tense, hands clenched at his sides. He'd changed into casual clothes, black jeans, a simple t-shirt, but he still carried himself like violence wrapped in skin, like power barely restrained. And facing him was an older Korean man with silver hair and a face like weathered stone. Kang Dae-jung, the second in command, the man who'd shot her in the alley, the man who'd helped murder her father. Seeing him up close, in good light, Maya's breath caught. The same face from the alley. The same face from 15 years ago. Glimpsed through closet slats and smoke. Time had changed, the details added lines, silvered the hair, but the essential cruelty remained. This was the man who'd laughed while her world burned. Since the moment she walked through my door, Ji-hoon said quietly, each word deliberate. And I'll keep protecting her. From you, from anyone who tries to harm her. Kang laughed bitter, sharp, the sound of a man who'd stopped caring about consequences. You'd risk everything for some ghost? For a woman you've known less than a week? Have you lost your mind? Yes. The simplicity of it, the certainty, stole Maya's breath. No hesitation, no qualification, just yes. Yes, I would risk everything for her. Then you're a fool. Kang moved closer, predatory, and Maya saw two other men step from the shadows, his personal security, here in what should have been Ji-hoon's private space. A power play, a message. The other organizations are already asking questions. Lee's crew saw you carrying an injured woman into Hwaryeon. Word spreads in our world, Ji-hoon, faster than you can contain it. And when they find out you're harboring Marcus Jenkins's daughter, the sole witness to what really happened 15 years ago, they'll turn on you. War, blood. Everything your legitimacy was supposed to prevent. Let them come. She's not worth it. Kang's voice dropped, venomous. She's a liability, a loose end that should have been tied off years ago. Give her to me. I'll make it quick, quiet, and we can all move forward. No, this isn't a request, Ji-hoon. This is me trying to save you from yourself, from repeating your father's mistakes. My father's mistakes? Ji-hoon's voice turned to ice, and Maya saw something shift in his posture the moment before violence, the gathering of power. You mean your mistakes? You think I don't know? Haven't pieced it together? Kang went very still, the predatory movement stopping. The timing, Ji-hoon continued, each word a blade. The convenient witnesses who supported my father's version of events. The way you rose to second in command 3 months after the fire, when you'd been just another soldier before. The way my father trusted you implicitly, never questioned your loyalty. I've been investigating, Kang. Going through old records, talking to people who were there. Careful, boy. You framed Marcus Jenkins. Fed my father lies, manipulated his paranoia. Made him believe Jenkins was a threat when the only threat was you, skimming money, building your own power base. And when my father ordered the hit, you made sure it was brutal, excessive, a message to anyone who might question you. You killed an innocent man and his daughter to advance your own position. She's not dead, Kang said, gesturing toward the bedroom door where Maya hid. That was my one mistake, assuming an 8-year-old would die in a burning building like she should have. But I can correct that mistake now. You murdered him in front of his child. Ji-hoon's voice cracked with fury. You burned her world to ashes, traumatized her so badly she spent 15 years as a ghost. And now you want me to finish what you started? I want you to be smart, to think with your head instead of your, get out. The command was absolute, brooking no argument. Get out of my home, out of my organization, out of my sight. You're done, Kang. I'll be calling a council meeting tomorrow. Everyone will know what you did, what you've been doing. Your power play is over. Kang smiled, slow, cruel, the expression of a man who'd been planning for this moment. By tomorrow morning, every organization in this city will know you're protecting the Jenkins girl. I've already sent the messages, already planted the seeds. And then we'll see how long your pretty kingdom lasts. We'll see if she's still worth it when your empire is burning around you. He turned, walked toward the door toward Maya. She stumbled back, but not fast enough. The bedroom door swung open, and Kang stood there, looking at her with eyes like winter. Their gazes met witness and executioner, victim and killer, past and present colliding. "Hello, little ghost," Kang said softly in English, his accent thick. "Still alive, still causing problems. How your father would weep to see you now." Ji-hoon's whore, hiding behind the son of the man who ordered his death. Maya moved before thought, before strategy. Her hand cracked across Kang's face with enough force to snap his head sideways, the sound of the slap echoing in the small space. Her palm stung, but the pain was satisfying, cathartic. "My father's name doesn't belong in your mouth," she hissed, her voice steady despite the rage shaking through her. "You don't get to speak of him. You don't get to judge his memory. You killed him. You burned him alive, and you will pay for it." Kang touched his split lip, examined the blood on his fingers, then smiled through red-stained teeth. "Spirited. I see the appeal. Enjoy her while you can, Ji-hoon. She'll be dead by sunrise, and you'll be removed from leadership for the weakness that let her live." Then he was gone, his men following, footsteps echoing down the stairs, leaving fury and dread in his wake, leaving the scent of violence and inevitability. Ji-hoon turned to Maya, and she saw everything in his face rage at Kang, fear for her, determination burning like a forge fire. "How much did you hear?" he asked quietly. "Enough." Her voice shook despite her efforts to control it. "Enough to know that I'm destroying everything you've worked for, that staying here means war, means your people turning on you, means the end of everything you've built." "Maya, he's right," the words burst out, raw and desperate. "I'm a liability, a ghost who should have stayed buried. I need to leave. Tonight. Disappear again. If I'm gone, the organizations have no reason to." "No." Ji-hoon caught her wrist gentle but firm, his thumb finding her pulse point, feeling her heart race. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way." She tried to pull free, but he held on. "Don't you see? As long as I exist, you're vulnerable. Your position, your family, your people, everything is at risk because of me. Because you chose to save me instead of killing me like you should have. Then let it burn." Ji-hoon pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. "Let it all burn, Maya. I don't care. You have to care. You have responsibilities. I don't care about position or power or any of it. If the cost is you." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes, to see the truth burning there. "I lost 15 years to my father's sins, to trying to redeem a legacy that wasn't worth saving. I won't lose you to Kang's ambitions. I won't sacrifice you for an organization built on blood and lies." Maya's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and broken and trying to survive in a world that took everything from you. I know you make terrible coffee, and you smile when you think no one's watching. I know you have nightmares about fire and you wake up gasping. And you won't talk about it, but you grip the blanket like you're afraid you'll burn if you let go." She hadn't known he'd noticed those things. Hadn't realized he was watching her the way she'd been watching him. "I know," Ji-hoon continued, his voice cracking, "that for the first time in years, I feel something other than empty. That when I'm with you, I remember what it's like to be human, not just a position or a legacy. You make me want to be better, to actually succeed at being different from my father. That's not enough reason to throw away everything. It's the only reason." He cut her off, fierce. "I'd rather die protecting you than live without trying. I'd rather lose everything and have you than keep my empire and lose my soul. Don't you understand? You're not the cost. You're the point." She kissed him then hard, desperate, tasting salt from tears she hadn't realized were falling. His arms wrapped around her, careful of her healing wound, and she pressed close enough to feel his heartbeat against her chest, rapid and strong. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead against his chest, listened to that steady rhythm, tried to memorize the sound of being wanted, being chosen, being more than a ghost. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Ji-hoon tensed. "For what?" "For this." She pulled away fast, ran for the door before he could stop her, before her resolve could crack. "Maya!" Ji-hoon's voice, shocked and furious. His footsteps behind her, but she was already down the stairs, already pushing through the restaurant's back door into the night. "Don't," she called back. "Don't follow me. Please, let me do this. Let me save you for once." She didn't wait to hear his response. Didn't look back. Just ran into the rain-soaked streets, tears mixing with the drops falling from the sky, her heart breaking with every step. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Pier 54. Midnight. Come alone or I start with Jihoon's sister. Maya didn't know if Jihoon had a sister. Didn't matter. She'd already decided, already made her choice the moment Kang's smile had promised violence. Her life for his safety. A ghost trading herself for something real, something worth saving. She was done running from death. Time to run toward it instead. The warehouse at Pier 54 was exactly where Kang said it would be, a skeletal structure on the edge of the Hudson, abandoned for years, all broken windows and rusted steel. Maya walked through puddles that reflected broken streetlights and distant city glow. The rain had returned, of course it had, turning the world silver and cold, washing the streets clean of everything but the stain of what was coming. Her gun was heavy in her pocket, the same gun Jihoon had confiscated the first night, the one she'd stolen back this morning when Minjun wasn't watching. Loaded. Ready. She'd survived 15 years on cunning and caution. Tonight she'd need something more: courage, maybe. Or just the willingness to finally stop running. She'd lived through fire once. She could survive whatever came next. The warehouse door stood open, an invitation, a trap. Maya walked through. The interior was vast and empty. All concrete floors and exposed beams, puddles of rainwater gleaming in the dim light from distant street lamps. Kang waited in the center, flanked by 4 men with guns, more than he'd mentioned in the text. But that figured. Men like him never played fair. He smiled when he saw her, the smile of a hunter who'd finally cornered his prey, all teeth and no warmth. The ghost returns, he said in English, for her benefit. Alone, I see. Good. Love always did make people stupid. Let him go. Maya kept her voice steady, her hand in her pocket, fingers curled around the gun's grip. Jihoon, your fight is with me, not him. Let him keep his position. Let him lead. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. Kang laughed, the sound echoing in the empty space. Let him? You think I need your permission? You think this is about you? Then what's it about? Power. Kang circled her slowly, a predator savoring the moment before the kill. It's always about power. Jihoon is weak, too soft, too concerned with honor and legitimacy. He's made us vulnerable, made us targets. The other organizations see kindness as weakness. They're already planning moves against us, territory grabs, challenges to our authority. So you kill me and take over? Use my death as proof of his weakness? Precisely. Kang stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell expensive whiskey on his breath. By morning, the organizations will have voted him out, and whoever takes his place, well, that depends on who has the strongest claim, who showed strength, who protected the family's interests. You. Me. He smiled wider. I've been building support for months, ever since it became clear Jihoon would never be the leader his father was. Your appearance was a gift, proof of his divided loyalties, evidence of his weakness. And your death? That will be my coronation. Maya's hand tightened on the gun in her pocket. So I'm just a symbol to you. A tool. You've always been a tool. Kang's voice turned cold. 15 years ago, you were a tool to eliminate your father. Tonight, you're a tool to eliminate his son. Full circle. Poetic, really. My father didn't deserve what you did to him. Your father was naive. He thought honor mattered, thought rules could change our world. He didn't understand that power is the only currency that matters, that violence is the only language that resonates. Kang moved closer, his voice dropping. I didn't enjoy killing him, if it helps. It was just necessary. He was in the way. And me? When you killed an 8-year-old's father in front of her? When you burned my home with me inside? That was just necessary too? You were supposed to die in the fire. That was the plan, no witnesses, no complications. But somehow you survived. He studied her face. You've been quite the complication ever since, haven't you? Even as a ghost, even disappeared, you were a weight on Jihoon's conscience, a reminder of his father's sins. And now, in person, you're destroying him from the inside out. Maya's hand moved toward her pocket, slow, careful, but Kang was faster. His gun was out, pressed to her forehead before she'd cleared leather, cold metal against her skin. Did you really think it would be that easy? He whispered. That you could just shoot me and solve everything? I've been playing this game since before you were born, girl. No, said a voice from the shadows, steady and cold. But I did. Jihoon stepped into the light, his own gun trained on Kang's head, soaked from rain, furious, terrified, alive. Min-jun materialized from another entrance, and 2 other men, Ji-hoon's personal guards, took positions at the exits. Ji-hoon. Maya's breath caught. Did you really think, Ji-hoon said quietly, never taking his eyes off Kang, that I wouldn't follow you? That I'd let you trade yourself for me? That I'd let you walk into a trap alone? How touching, Kang sneered, though Maya saw his eyes calculating, reassessing. Romeo and Juliet, Korean-American edition. But you're outnumbered, boy. I have 6 men to your 4. The second you fire, this becomes a bloodbath, and you don't want that. Too many witnesses, too many complications, too messy for your legitimate business approach. Then we all die together. Ji-hoon's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Pull the trigger, Kang. See what happens. See if your ambition is worth dying for. The moment stretched taut, infinite. Maya could feel Kang's hand trembling slightly, the gun barrel cold against her forehead, could feel her own pulse racing, could taste copper and fear. Then everything happened at once. Kang's finger tightened on the trigger. Maya dropped, throwing herself sideways. Ji-hoon fired. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, echoing off concrete and steel. Kang staggered, clutching his shoulder, his gun clattering to the floor. His men raised their weapons. Maya pulled her gun, fired twice in rapid succession, not at Kang, but at the men beside him. Both dropped, clutching leg wounds, screaming. Not fatal shots, but incapacitating. The remaining men opened fire. Glass shattered, concrete exploded in puffs of dust. Maya rolled behind a concrete pillar, her breath coming in gasps, adrenaline burning through her veins. Ji-hoon's men returned fire, controlled bursts, professional. This was what they'd trained for, what they'd been bred to do. The warehouse became a chaos of sound and violence and muzzle flashes in the dark. Through it all, Kang was moving, wounded but not beaten, reaching for a backup weapon. He lunged toward Maya, grabbing her arm, using her as a shield as he pressed a gun to her temple. "Cease fire," he screamed. "Cease fire or she dies." The shooting stopped. Silence descended, broken only by the groans of wounded men and the distant sound of sirens. Someone had called the police, which meant they had maybe 3 minutes before this became an official crime scene. Ji-hoon stood 20 feet away, his gun still raised, every muscle tense. "Let her go, Kang. This is between you and me. Everything is between me and you now, boy. You've chosen her over the family, over your position, over everything your father built." Kang's gun pressed harder against Maya's temple. "She's made you weak, proved everything I've been saying. You're not fit to lead." "Maybe not," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Maybe I'm not fit to lead an organization built on murder and lies. Maybe that's not a position worth keeping. Then you'll die with her." Kang's finger moved toward the trigger. Maya threw her head back, smashing into Kang's nose. Heard the crunch of cartilage, felt him stagger. She twisted, drove her elbow into his gut, broke his grip. He fired. The bullet went wide, and then Ji-hoon was there, moving faster than she'd ever seen him move. He hit Kang like a truck, bore him down to the concrete. Fists and fury and 15 years of buried rage, all unleashed at once. By the time Ji-hoon stopped, blood staining his knuckles, Kang was unconscious, broken, gasping on the floor. Ji-hoon turned back to Maya, dropped to his knees beside her, hands reaching for her, checking for wounds, for blood, for any sign she was hurt. "Are you okay?" Did he? "I'm fine," she gasped. "I'm okay." "We need to go. Now. Before the police." "No." Maya caught his hands, held them. "No more running. No more hiding. Let them come. Let them hear the truth. Let them know what Kang did, what your father did. It's time for the whole story to come out." Ji-hoon stared at her, understanding dawning. "Maya, I'm done being a ghost," she said firmly. "I'm done hiding. It's time to step into the light, whatever that means." Together, sirens wailed closer. Red and blue lights began to flash through the broken windows. Ji-hoon pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. "Together," he agreed. "Whatever comes." The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and second chances. Maya woke to morning light filtering through blinds, her body aching but whole, alive against all odds. Ji-hoon sat in the chair beside her bed, head bowed, wearing the same clothes from last night, torn, blood-stained, speaking of violence survived. He looked up when she stirred, relief and exhaustion warring across his face. "You stayed," she whispered. "Where else would I be?" He reached for her hand, and she gave it willingly, let him bring it to his lips. Let him hold on like she was the anchor keeping him from drowning. "Kang?" she asked. "Alive. In custody. Singing like a canary, actually." Something almost like satisfaction flickered across Ji-hoon's face. "Turns out he's been keeping records for years. Insurance, he called it. Recordings, documents, financial records of every crime, every hit, every betrayal. He thought it would protect him, give him leverage. And it's evidence now. All of it. The police have everything, including proof of what happened to your father. They're reopening the case, officially clearing Marcus Jenkins's name. By tomorrow, the whole city will know the truth. Your father was innocent. He was a good man killed by ambitious monsters." Maya's eyes burned with tears, not grief this time, but something closer to relief. Vindication. Her father's name would be cleared. His memory honored. Finally. "And you?" she asked. "Your position?" "The organizations voted this morning." Ji-hoon's smile was bitter, but not unhappy. "I'm out. No longer head of the Park family. They needed someone to blame for the chaos, for the police attention, for the exposure. I volunteered." "Ji-hoon, I'm sorry." "Don't be." "I'm not." He squeezed her hand. "I'm done, Maya. Done with blood and codes and legacy. I'm selling my stake in the organization to Lee. He's smart, cautious, will lead them in a better direction. Going legitimate. Really legitimate this time." "What will you do?" "I don't know yet." He met her eyes, and she saw freedom there, terrifying and exhilarating at once. "But I'd like to figure it out with you. If you'll have me." Maya's throat tightened. "You're giving me a choice. Always." He paused. "You can leave. I have money set aside enough for a new life. Anywhere you want. New name, new identity, complete freedom. You could go to California, start over where no one knows your face. Or you could stay. With me? Help me build something that has nothing to do with our fathers or their mistakes. Something that's just ours." It should have been an impossible choice. The woman she'd been 6 days ago would have run, would have taken the money and the freedom and never looked back, would have disappeared into anonymity and called it survival. But she wasn't that woman anymore. "I'm staying," Maya said, the words certain, clear. "I spent 15 years as a ghost. I'm done disappearing. I'm done hiding who I am and what I want. I choose you. I choose this. Whatever it looks like, wherever it leads, I choose us." Ji-hoon exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years, for his entire life. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her, then soft, reverent, like she was something precious instead of something broken, like she was a beginning instead of an end. "Saranghae, ne biol," he murmured against her lips. "I love you, my star." And Maya finally understood why her father had said those words every night, in every language his daughter would understand. Not as goodbye, but as a promise. As proof that love was the only thing that made surviving worthwhile. That being someone's star meant lighting up their darkness, and letting them illuminate yours in return. 6 months later, Hwaryeon looked different. The white tablecloths remained, but now they held families instead of dangerous men. Children's laughter echoed where deals used to be whispered. The menu had expanded real Korean cuisine, recipes from Ji-hoon's grandmother, fusion dishes that bridged cultures and histories. Korean soul food, they called it. And it was becoming the hottest restaurant in Manhattan. It was still Ji-hoon's, but now it was theirs. Maya moved through the dining room, checking tables, refilling water glasses, greeting regulars by name. No more hiding, no more running, just living. Finally, fully, completely living. She'd let her hair grow natural, wore it in an impressive crown that turned heads. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost to stress and fear. And she'd started smiling, really smiling at strangers. "Table 7 needs more banchan," Ji-hoon called from the kitchen. He'd traded his expensive suits for an apron, his gun for chef's knives. Looked better on him than power ever did. Happy looked good on him. Peace looked good on him. "Already on it, boss." He appeared in the doorway, flower on his cheek, smiling that rare smile he saved just for her, the one that was all warmth and no guardedness, all love and no calculation. "Don't call me that." "Why not? You're bossy enough." "Come here." She went, weaving through tables full of people eating and talking and living their lives in the space that used to house so much darkness. She let him pull her close despite the customers watching, despite the flour transferring to her shirt. Let him kiss her like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. because they'd chosen this normalcy and kimchi jjigae and growing old together instead of the legacies that tried to bury them, because they'd survived fire and blood and betrayal and come out the other side still believing love was possible. Outside, rain began to fall, soft autumn rain, nothing like the violent storm that had started everything. Maya turned toward the window, watched water paint the glass in streaks of silver, and remembered another rainy night. Another version of herself bleeding, desperate, stumbling through a door she'd sworn never to enter. Ji-hoon came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her good shoulder. The one without the scar, though he loved that one too, kissed it in the mornings and called it beautiful, called her beautiful, called her his. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That I'm glad I came through that door that night. That I was bleeding and terrified and exactly where I needed to be." Maya leaned back into him, safe, home, chosen. That sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. That ghosts can learn to live again. They say some debts are written in blood and some in rain. But Maya Jenkins learned that the most important debts, the ones that matter, the ones worth paying, are written in trust, in courage, in the radical act of loving someone despite every reason not to. Her father had died protecting the truth. But she'd lived to build something better. Not revenge, not justice, just love, messy and complicated and absolutely worth it. The kind of love that transforms ghosts into humans, that turns enemies into family, that proves redemption is possible even in the darkest stories. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside, the lights were warm, the laughter was real, and two people who'd been ghosts finally learned how to haunt the world together, not as tragedy waiting to happen, just as Ji-hoon and Maya, two survivors, two souls, one impossible, beautiful choice. And every day, they chose each other again.